Democrat protesters were forced to run as fast as they could when they realized that they were protesting J.D. Vance on the wrong street. I guess Make America Healthy Again is already working. Enjoy. For those of you listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, there were two parallel streets divided by a pretty wide and hilly median. The protesters had to run all the way across, up the hill, and to the other street to get there in time for J.D. Vance's motorcade. And a lot of them were older and a bit heavier, so it was more of a waddle than a sprint. Well, it turns out that this may have been an intentional troll from J.D. Vance. According to the Wisconsin State Journal, Vance's route change angers protesters in La Crosse. They actually called this a dirty trick. Protesters who gathered along Copeland Avenue expected to greet Vice President J.D. Vance with signs and chants. Instead, they found themselves sprinting towards Rose Street when Vance's motorcade crossed onto the normally one-way northbound Rose Street. "I knew I couldn't run fast enough, so I didn't try," said Carol Nelson of Caledonia, Minnesota. "It was a dirty trick on their part," she also said. In fact, the Wisconsin Democrat Party social media accounts are on a rampage right now. They are furious that Vance did this. They wrote on social media, "J.D. Vance went the wrong way down a one-way street to avoid protesters in Wisconsin. Disgraceful." But here's the thing. We know that the Secret Service has multiple contingency plans, not just for when they actually arrive on location, but they plan out multiple routes in case anything happens. They need to do this. They need to think quickly on their feet in case there's a threat, and they need to go somewhere else. If you take a closer look at the video of the protest, you'll notice that, yes, on what they called the wrong side of the street, there were actually barricades blocking the road and law enforcement making sure that no one was entering this one-way street. So this could have been the plan all along, or maybe it was a contingency and Vance wanted to troll them, or maybe they needed to do it to get there on time. I don't know. But the reality is that road was blocked off. No one was put in danger. The motorcade got there safely, and the protesters, well, they can be mad all they want. So, speaking of the Secret Service, now would be a good time to mention that they have been unburdened by what has been, according to CNN, Trump cancels Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail that was extended by undisclosed Joe Biden order. The reason I wanted to share that headline in particular is because most of the other headlines are making it sound like Trump is enacting revenge, enacting retribution. That basically Democrats are claiming Trump canceled Kamala Harris's Secret Service because he's trying to put her life in danger, right? But not only did Joe Biden secretly extend her Secret Service protection, Axios provides more detail here. Vice presidents usually only receive 6 months of Secret Service protection after they leave office. This means that Kamala Harris, had she been any other vice president, her Secret Service detail would have been done July 21st. So essentially over a month ago. So President Trump, he's not canceling it immediately. She actually will have protection until September 1st. If this was about revenge, if this was about retribution, I mean, he has his own Secret Service detail, right? This would have been available to him on January 20th, the moment he was inaugurated, the moment he became president of the United States. He could have canceled her detail months ago. He could have canceled it anytime, but instead he waited till past the usual 6-month deadline, let it go on even further. I'm sure that the Secret Service, obviously they monitor threats, they monitor chatter, and just a real danger to whoever they're protecting. And what I imagine is they're saying, hey, there's no real threat. She can handle her own security, and we need to be good stewards of government resources. So it wasn't just Democrats scrambling to get to the right side of the street. There was another protest where Democrats just made an absolute fool of themselves when they disrupted a celebratory ribbon-cutting ceremony in Maine. But before we get to that, I would like to acknowledge Jenny Renkin, Shannon Miller, and Jenna Monoro ×2. I'm so glad you have your old username back as the members of today's Governor's Club. These are people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you enjoy. Well, Susan Collins is not a MAGA Republican. She's pretty centrist, pretty establishment. She definitely votes with the Democrats sometimes. There's no reason, really, for Democrats to hate her, right? It's not like she's a far-right Republican. She's closer to them than most people in the Senate, than most people in the House. All of that to say, Susan Collins was invited to be the guest of honor. She was invited to do the ribbon cutting at a small town where they unveiled their brand new Main Street. This should have been a celebratory moment for everyone. This should have been just no politics, right? Just everyone happy that this new Main Street is opening and something that people can use. But instead, Democrat protesters showed up and ruined this moment. It would be one thing if that was a town hall, right? But no, this was supposed to celebrate the accomplishment of the town. They could have done what the protesters did with J.D. Vance, lined the sides of the roads to make their displeasure known. They could have waited outside of the building to heckle her there, but instead they chose to disrupt this party. She was also asked, by the way, to give a speech commemorating this moment, and, well, that did not go well. Based on how everyone is sitting in that video, it's clear that it's not an organic protest. Had those been organic protesters, they would have been seated all over that small auditorium, right? But instead, they were all grouped together in the back, which tells me that this clearly was premeditated and organized. And it actually reminds me of the J.D. Vance protest earlier, because when we looked at that local news report, J.D. Vance was in Wisconsin, but some of the protesters had driven there from Minnesota. So in other words, they weren't even local. They had come from out of state to protest his motorcade. So it makes me wonder how many people there are actually from that town? How many people are actually the constituents here versus people just showing up to cause a ruckus? As always, though, all of this is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So going back to J.D. Vance's motorcade, do you think that this was an intentional troll by J.D. Vance to the protesters? Do you think that this was always the planned route, or do you think they needed to rely on one of their contingencies and they switched at the last moment? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers in the algorithm just like you. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.